Okay, so on this question, they're wanting us to factor. We have to factor 4 terms. So how do you factor 4 terms? Factor 4 terms. Well, step number 1 is you do first 2, last 2. So you look at the first 2 and the last 2. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the signs. Well, yeah, I'm going to change the signs. Let me do that. Let me come in. I'm going to make this a minus sign because I want to make it a little harder, and this a plus sign. And I'll show both ways probably. Let me do the hard version first. Like that. Let's make the problem. Let's pretend that was the problem. Okay, so you do first 2, last 2. So first 2, last 2. What do I mean first 2? Like, well, what's in common to those first 2? What do those first 2 share? They share an x. Right? Take it out. See how that's right? X times x. We go back to x squared, x times 7. Go back to 7x. And then the last 2, what do they share in common? Well, what goes into 3x and 21? 3. But notice the front term is negative. The front of that group. This is the new part I wanted to show, the more tricky part. If the front of a group, you're factoring, is negative, then you've got to take out negative whatever you're taking out in common. So the -3. You can't take out a +3. So whatever sign is in the very middle, let that be your sign. If this was a +3 in the middle, then I would have a +3. Does that make sense? Just follow the lead of whatever sign you have in the middle. Well, then how do you know what goes on the inside? Well, whatever works, right? Factoring is just reverse multiplying. So just ask yourself, -3 times what? We'll go back to -3x. We'll x. And now here's the tricky part. -3 times what? We'll go back to plus 21. Negative times what is positive? Well, negative, right? -3 times -7. 2 negatives make a positive, don't they? And that makes a perfect match, doesn't it? See how both things work perfectly? The signs are true and the match is accurate. So, and then how do you go from there? Well, we can't stop here. So I'll say we're not done because we have a minus sign. Minus outside of parentheses. So if you have a plus or minus outside of parentheses, you're not done. You have more work to do. So how do we finish it? Well, they share in common x minus 7. X minus 7. Remove it, bring down the leftovers, x, take away 3. And that's correct. That whole x minus 7 could go back. And so there we are, we're done. Now let me change the problem. Like what if it had been, down here for a second. What if it had been the other way? What if it had been x squared minus 7x like the original, which was plus 3x minus 21. You could do the same thing. It's basically first 2, last 2, take out the x. From the first 2, take out the 3. From the back 2, see how this time I took out a plus 3? So whatever sign is in the very middle, that's the sign you put in the front. Everybody seeing that? If it's -3, then you take out -3. If it's plus, then you take out plus. So the sign, it's in the front of the group, must be taken out. Then you go forward the same way. We'll just say, okay, these two, what do they share in common? A parenthesis, x minus 7, remove it. What does it leave behind? X plus 3, done. That would be the answer to that one. So depending on how the signs go. So whatever sign is in the front of a group, that's the sign you take out of that group. And then you just make sure the inside works. And so there we go.